Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anne. I am working for the EFSA Talent Selection Team, as some of you may know. And today, together with my colleague Panos, we are going to present and coordinate this webinar. We are extremely happy to have you all here today, so thank you very much for attending. We hope that this webinar will help you understand what we are doing in EFSA and will convince you to join us. So this presentation will be divided in 3 parts. In the first part, we will talk a bit about what EFSA is and what it is that we're doing in our agency. In a second part, we will have the chance to listen to Sergio, who is one of our colleagues and who is working in the EU cooperation team. Then we will listen to Maria, who used to be a trainee, then an EU FORA fellow, and is now working as an interim in EFSA. If you have any question at any time, please do not hesitate to use the chat box. We will do our best to reply to all your questions in writing, and if we have time, also orally at the end of this webinar. I am now going to leave the floor to my colleague Panos, who will say a few words about EFSA.
Okay, hello. Thank you all also from my side for being with us today. As Anne said, Panos, we are both working for the Human Capital Unit at EFSA, and it is our pleasure to participate today in this session during the POLITICO EU Studies and Career Fair. So let's talk about EFSA. EFSA is one of more than 40 decentralized agencies in the European Union, which contribute to the implementation of EU policies. I'm sure that you are all aware of EMA and ECDC during the COVID-19 pandemic. Their work, their opinions are extremely important for all of us. EU agencies support cooperation between the European Union and national governments by pooling technical and specialist expertise from both the EU institutions and national authorities. They work on issues and problems affecting the everyday life of almost 500 million people living in the EU. And our work has a major impact, providing EU institutions and countries with specialized knowledge in areas as diverse as the food we eat, our medicines, the chemicals we come into contact with, our education, the quality of our working lives and environment. So EFSA was set up in 2002 following food crises such as the mad cow disease outbreaks that badly shook confidence in the safety of food in the European Union. It was initially based in Brussels, and since 2004 we have our headquarters in Parma, in Italy. Our aim is to improve the EU food safety system, to ensure a high level of consumer production, to restore and maintain confidence in the EU food supply, and to clearly separate risk assessment and risk management functions. So what EFSA does? EFSA is a keystone of risk assessment regarding food and feed safety in the European Union. Our work covers the entire food chain from field to fork. It is one of a number of organizations responsible for food safety in Europe. We provide independent scientific advice and support for EU risk managers and policymakers on food and feed safety. We provide independent timely risk communication, and we also promote cooperation. And regarding that, our colleague Sergio will say more in a while. What we do not do in the EU food safety system, risk assessment is kept separate from risk management. So in EFSA, we do not develop the policies and the legislation, we do not adopt the regulations, and we don't authorize new products. And also we are not responsible for the enforcement of food safety legislation. This slide gives you a very quick overview of our population. We have colleagues coming from almost all the EU countries. We always try to disseminate our calls to all countries, and especially to those which are underrepresented, like the northern and eastern EU countries. And here I would like also to clarify that there are career opportunities at EFSA, which are open also to non-EU nationals, like the trainship call. We have more than 500 staff members, a lively community of around 75 trainees, and more than 1,350 experts. We would like also to give you an idea about our scientific output. Every year we publish around 500 scientific opinions. It goes without saying that in addition to scientific expertise, we also seek business profiles in human resources, business management, finance and procurement, law, IT services, etc. At the moment, we are looking for our next head in finance, so please visit our booth to get more information if you are interested. I will now give the floor back to Anne to guide us to the next parts of our event.
Thank you very much, Panos. So we're now going to listen to Maria, who is now working as a junior scientific officer in EFSA. Her profile is really interesting because she did 2 of the 4 career opportunities that EFSA has for young professionals. So if you go just to the slide before. So as you can see here, young professionals can join EFSA on standards position if they meet the specific requirements in the EU4A scheme, if they are scientific graduates, and if they are interested in risk assessment as a guest or as a trainee. So, hello Maria, and thank you very much for joining us today. So, as it is written on the screen, you are currently working as an interim in EFSA. What did you do before that? Can you please describe your career path?
Yes, thank you, Anne, and good morning, everyone. Well, I joined the European Food Safety Authority in November 2018 when I started the EFSA traineeship experience together with other trainees from a wide variety of professional and educational backgrounds. It was a very intense experience and I was involved in many tasks. In particular, I was actively involved in the activities of the biological hazard team concerning coordination and scientific support of the expert working groups and the biohazard panel in performing risk assessment of the ongoing mandates at that time. In addition, I was involved in the activities of the biological monitoring team concerning the data collection and the drafting of the European summary report for transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. And I was involved also in an organization of webinars to communicate with data providers from the different member states on how to submit data to EFSA with a new software. So during the traineeship, I had the chance to participate to many high-level trainings, but also social activities. And during that time, I also decided to apply to the EFSA European Food Risk Assessment Fellowship Program, EFORA, because I consider it a unique opportunity to continue to have the experience on food risk assessment, because it's a 12-month program that gives you the chance to get hands-on experience on the field. So I was extremely happy when I was selected together with other 14 fellows. And I was based in the Netherlands at the National Institute for Public Health and the Environment, RIVM, and there I worked on a project. And during the year, I was also invited to attend to 6 weeks of training on risk communication and food risk assessment. And moving to the more recent times, from September 2020, I rejoined EFSA in the same unit where I did my traineeship. So the biological hazards and contaminant units, and I'm currently involved as a junior scientific officer with an interim position in the activities related to the scientific evaluation of application in the area of animal byproduct treatments. So indeed now I have more responsibility compared to when I start first EFSA, but I'm enriched by the EFSA traineeship experience and the EFORA experience.
Okay, it's really good to hear. So you have quite a broad experience in EFSA. During all these years, what was the most exciting project you worked on?
Well, for each of the steps, indeed, I work on very exciting topics and projects, but maybe I would like to mention the EFORA project, the one that I worked on during the entire year of the program, that was on modeling a magnitude estimation of cross-contamination in the kitchen for quantitative microbiological risk assessment. And indeed, even if the topic could have been complex, together with my supervisor, with our learn by doing approach, we were able to develop together a new mathematical model, and was indeed a great experience. And also the project, the technical report, together with the technical reports from the other fellows of my cohort, are now published in the EFSA journal.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, could you tell us how these career opportunities helped you to grow both professionally and personally?
Yes, well, I come from the experience of the laboratory research. After that, I joined EFSA, and I realized from the very beginning that EFSA gives many opportunities to grow professionally and personally. In particular, I found very stimulating the multicultural and multidisciplinary environment. And I feel that every day I have the opportunity to improve my competencies. And this is not only by the trainings that are available, but also by working with the EFSA colleagues and also the external experts. And I also have the chance to improve my skills, not only in my field, but also the digital skills, for example, or the communication, as I mentioned, with the organization of webinars, but also time management, critical observation with the task that I've been involved in. And also my adaptability and flexibility has improved with the opportunity to live abroad with the EUFORA experience. And I'm also very grateful to EFSA for the possibility to build a network in the food risk assessment field.
Okay, so in a few words, and that will be my last question, why would you recommend joining EFSA?
Well, I would recommend joining EFSA to anyone interested in working in an international environment and that would be interested in being part of Europe, of a European agency, because it's a very dynamic environment. And as I mentioned, joining EFSA has an impact in your professional, personal life. And also the work that you do, you can really realize that has an impact at the international level and that you are also contributing also for the food safety in Europe.
Thank you very much, Maria. Really clear and engaging. So I can see that Sergio is back. So I propose to my colleague Panos to go back to his slide. And then I will ask the same question that I asked a few minutes ago. So Sergio, first of all, as I said, thank you very much for being here today. Could you please tell us more about EFSA and its role in the EU ecosystem?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. So good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sergio. I'm Portuguese. I come from Lisbon. I work in EFSA already for more than 10 years, in fact. And currently, I'm team leader of the European Cooperation Team. The role of EFSA in the EU context. My colleague Panos has already anticipated. EFSA is a body that provides scientific advice to policymakers, regulators, risk managers, and we also are active not only in the production of scientific advice, but also in the context of carrying out risk communication with regards to that scientific advice. We need to acknowledge and consider that EFSA draws much of its knowledge and information from member states. So we need to depict EFSA in the context of a broader perspective, whereby basically we also involve in our work national food safety agencies from the member states, research institutes, being it more on the academic domain or on the regulatory domain. And we also have, as Panos already anticipated before, also interactions with the European agencies. We are part of the group of the European agencies, and some of them have activities which are borderline with those of the remit of EFSA, the ones that Panos highlighted. The European Center for Disease Control, the European Chemical Agency, the European Medicines Agency. So we do work collaboratively with these European agencies, in order for us to provide the best possible scientific advice and to communicate on risks also. So if I would try to also explain a little bit more how these interactions occur, especially with regards to the interactions with the member states. Obviously, one needs to acknowledge that we cannot interact with all organizations at the same time. So we do have a formal framework for the interaction with the member states, and that occurs through what we call the Advisory Forum. The Advisory Forum is basically composed of the 27 member states plus Iceland and Norway, which sit there with the title of member. And we also have observers, including the European Commission. Each member state appoints one organization and one representative from that organization to represent the country in the dialogue with EFSA. It's important to retain the idea that in many countries, risk assessment is not only carried out by one single organization. However, as we cannot talk with all different organizations, and we have to have one counterpart with whom we have this dialogue. So the country formally designates this advisory forum member, which acts also on behalf of the other risk assessment national bodies in the country.
Thank you, Sergio. In the triangle, risk communication, risk management, and risk assessment, where does EFSA stand?
Interesting question, Anne. And I was talking about regulators and policymakers and risk managers. And all those, in fact, fit under the umbrella of what we call our customers. So the ones that task EFSA or request EFSA for scientific advice. So the questions come from the Commission, from the Parliament, from the Member States. EFSA can itself task own self-mandates in case it feels that there are areas where we have gaps of knowledge from a scientific perspective, and therefore we self-task ourselves with onto the production of scientific advice. I will not go through the details of how we basically go from the question to the output and how we communicate on that output, but basically we can distinguish 4 main blocks where basically we have to have a clear question. We have to go through a scientific process that we carry out our risk assessment. Then we produce a scientific output, which is then published in our journal, and we communicate about it. This process overall in the triangle of the risk analysis framework, so risk assessment, risk management, and risk communication, basically what we do is we touch on the corners of the triangle that relate with risk assessment and risk communication, whereas the policymakers, which are responsible for raising the questions, but at the same time, once they have the regulatory framework to implement and monitor their implementation, they sit on the risk management and risk communication corners of the triangle of risk analysis.
Okay, so another completely different question now. So we understand that EFSA is an EU agency, but do you also work with other international organizations?
Yes, definitely. We obviously we operate in an European context, and we are an European agency, and most of our interactions occur within the context of Europe. But one needs to acknowledge that food safety issues, hazards, risks do not know borders. They can occur in the context of Europe, and they can occur also elsewhere in the world. So it's very important for us to keep interactions and continue to follow up on the development of science in a global scale. So we do have counterparts at the global scale. We have interactions. We have clustered in this slide in 3 basically categories, what we call our partners, and those are the organizations in third countries where basically there is a risk assessment body which is carrying out tasks similar to those of EFSA, and we have a formalized approach for communication, so it's laid down on memorandums of cooperation. This is the cluster of the partners, and this occurs, for example, with US FDA in the United States, with Australia, with Japan, with China, with India, etc. Then we have the cluster, which is there on the slide, which is the yellow cluster or orange, but those are the countries basically that surround Europe. Within that cluster, we include the countries which have which are in the process of joining the European Union, and we have this subgroup of what we call EPA countries, which refers to Instrument for Pre-Accession. And we have a particular dialogue with them because we want certainly to push them forward an alignment with the EU acquis, with the EU legislation, also in the context of the scientific advice and scientific processes. We have a channel of communication with countries that surround Europe. Geographically, one would say eventually there's a justification for such interaction to occur and to promote also, to the extent possible, the harmonization of scientific practices and also for the exchange of scientific information. And we have other countries, which is depicted in the blue cluster in the slide, with whom we have had, ad hoc interactions from a cooperation perspective, also in terms of information exchange, networking, and this includes Russia, Brazil, Argentina, Indonesia, etc. Here it's more on an ad hoc basis. It's aimed at obviously the scientific exchange, but it also occurs in specific ad hoc topics that concern and are of the interest of the European Union and of those countries.
Thank you, Sergio. So last question from my side. As we know, you are the team leader in the EU cooperation team. Can you please tell us, what is the profile of your team colleagues? And when you recruit, what type of skills and knowledge are you looking for?
Yes, and definitely. And thanks for the question also. We are, in fact, in a particular context where we are having regular communications for reaching out for new experts to join our work through different channels. In the particular case of the European Cooperation Team, I mentioned in the very beginning, myself, I'm a veterinarian, so this is, I must add, is not necessarily a requirement. It helps, but it is not necessarily a requirement to work in the context of the engagement and cooperation unit and under the European Cooperation Team. What we are looking when we are recruiting is, profiles that are set under educational background and experience that relates with external relations, international relations, institutional relations, capacity building, cooperation, all those elements being then part of the educational background, being then part of the experience that the person has, are very important during the course of the process of recruitment. And just to finalize and add, for example, I am a veterinarian and I'm a team leader. My head of unit is as a legal background. So we are looking into a rather horizontal profile in the domains that I was mentioning before whenever we recruit.
Thank you, Sergio. That was my last question. I am now going to leave the floor to my colleague Panos, who will conclude this webinar.
Thank you, Anne. I think that the last points raised by Sergio can also help us reply to some questions that we see in the chat. So there was a question if we are interested in non-scientific backgrounds. And as Sergio explained, we have the engagement and cooperation, communication, engagement and cooperation department at EFSA. So we look also for candidates from with a non-scientific background, and we also have the business department. So we look also for HR profiles, business, legal, IT profiles. Also, I see here there's a question about the next trainship call, and if it is one call or if it is if there are several calls. So now the call for 2021 is closed. We will publish the new call around November and December. And there is one call for all EFSA units. So there is one call. We ask candidates to create a profile and apply to EFSA. They can select 2 areas of interest, and this can help us better define their interests and their profile with our needs. For example, now to give you information about the intakes, the call was closed in January, and we have 2 intakes in May and July. So we'll expect the new trainees to join us in a few months. I think that we don't have any other question. Of course, you can find us in our stand, and we will also participate in the breakout chat discussions. So please find us, and you will find the EFSA Talent Selection team waiting for you there. We would like to help you all for attending these sessions and thank the presenters who share their knowledge and their experience with us. And thanks also to the POLITICO team for organizing this great event, to all the exhibitors. Thank you.